season in California's recorded history. You often hear governors say that. The last few governors have consistently maintained that this year or last year, or the expectation of upcoming years, will be historic, and indeed that's been the case. Those are words very familiar to Californians. The reality at the end of the day is we need to approach things differently, and we need to acknowledge that the hots are getting a lot hotter, the dries are getting drier, and from a flooding concern, these atmospheric rivers, the wets are getting a lot wetter. These simultaneous crises of not only drought impacted by climate, extreme heat, extreme weather, dry soil conditions, but also energy reliability challenge not only California and Californians, but governors over the entire west coast of the United States. And so we're very grateful for the Secretary to come not only out here in California, but to visit other western states that are also struggling with extreme heat domes, droughts, and very perilous wildfire conditions. We are currently dealing with 9 large active wildfires here in the state of California. I want to compliment, as we often do, the incredible and heroic work of our wildfire teams, mutual aid, national, state, and local teams that suppressed 51 initial starts yesterday. We often focus on what we didn't stop, and we don't, I think, get the kind of credit these teams do for their saves. 51 initial starts are not going to be part of the language that we're using around the river fire, the monument fire, and McFarland new wildfires that we're grappling with today because of their extraordinary work. That said, we have the Dixie, 275,000 acres, 35% contained, where we have thousands, quite literally thousands, our efforts. The follow-up from those meetings has been extraordinary, and I just want to acknowledge that, and I think that's demonstrable here today with the presence of the Secretary just days after our last meeting with the President of the United States. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you for being out here. You know this issue as well or better than anybody. It means a lot to all of us in California. You took the time to meet with us.
Well, Governor, thank you. I really want to thank you. I want to say this to the folks in California. This is a governor who absolutely gets it when it comes to fire, and has been very forceful, as he needs to be, in making sure that people in Washington, D.C., President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, Congress, Secretary of Agriculture, understand and appreciate what's at stake here. A governor who cares deeply about the lives of those who are fighting fires. The more catastrophic the fire is, the greater the risk is. We just looked at a monument where brave people lost their life many, many years ago. We had the fatality here in this fire last year. We've already had a couple of fatalities in this fire year. And so first and foremost, it's the safety and concern that we have for the firefighters. Secondly, he understands and appreciates the economic opportunity that these forests represent to the state of California. And we need to do a better job. And he has told us that we need to do a better job. He has challenged us to do a better job. Governor, I understand what you're telling us. And I'm here to tell you we are prepared to do a better job if we have the resources to be able to do this. Candidly, I think it's fair to say over the generations, over the decades, we have tried to do this job on the cheap. We've tried to get by. a little bit of here, a little bit there, a little forest management over here, a little fire suppression over here. But the reality is that this has caught up with us, which is why we have an extraordinary number of catastrophic fires and why we have to significantly beef up our capacity. We have to have more boots on the ground, and I pledge to you and commit to you that will happen. We need to make sure that our firefighters are better compensated. Governor, that will happen. We need to do a better job and more forest management to reduce the risk of catastrophic fire. Governor, that's going to happen. We need to make sure that when we have catastrophic fires, we're in a position to begin the restoration and reforestation work that is so vital and so important to protect against further calamity. Governor, that's going to happen. And why am I confident it's going to happen? Because the Congress of the United States, the Senate right now, today, is debating the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which contains the beginning, the down payment of resources to make it happen. Instead of hundreds of millions of dollars, now Congress is talking about billions of dollars, which is what it's going to take. And that will be followed, I hope and believe, with a reconciliation bill, which is part of the President's Build Back Better agenda, which will also dedicate resources to greater resiliency in this national treasure that we have in our forest system. With those resources, we can with these two bills. And so I appreciate the opportunity to be here, appreciate the work of the folks who put this fire out and who are going to reclaim and restore this area. And we are pledging to you, Governor,
we've been on with Republicans, Democrats. We're doing mutual aid across the spectrum, helping support our colleagues in Utah and Nevada and Montana, not just Oregon, Washington, and elsewhere, and vice versa. And so it's wonderful to see that spirit of collaboration and cooperation. 6,000 fires we've battled year to date. 580,000 acres have burned. Put that in perspective, last year was about 260,000 acres, so more than double the acres burned so far year to date, and we're just, we're getting started. So we're mindful of the work to do. A lot of pre-positioned assets, 1,399 new personnel. We got in the budget, $2+ billion all hazards budget, unprecedented in California history. $1.5 billion of that specifically for vegetation management, forest management, more active efforts to suppress as well as prevent these wildfires. But again, the scale and scope requires even a state as large as ours, the 5th largest economy in the world, running an $80 billion budget surplus. We still need the federal government support in your offering.
well, and the shared stewardship agreement we've entered into lays out a pathway for a 20-year commitment of partnership, and we want to do our part as a better partner.
Yeah, that's a minimum of 1 million acres a year that we'll actively manage together. And this never happened in the state, that the federal government and the state are aligning not just resources, but priorities, high priority projects, and a mutual agreement to advance our collective goals. So again, again, proof point of the fresh air of progress versus, dare I say, the stale air of normalcy over the last few years.
Take questions.
Yes, Dale Kassler from the Bee, SAC Bee. Does the Forest Service, as things stand right now today, does the Forest Service have the resources to get more aggressive on these initial starts? You've heard the criticism, you heard the governor's criticism over the last week or two. I mean, is the money there as it stands now, or is it waiting on the infrastructure bill?
Well, there is money there, but it does require us to prioritize this point in time, and that's based on the risk, and it's based on a calculation as to where there is the highest risk to life and property. That's at the end of the day the sort of the driving point here. We could always use more resources, but at the end of the day, we're going to make sure that we are focused on those places where there's the highest risk for life and property damage and loss, and to make sure that we do it in a way that is safest for our firefighters. That's the driving strategy and driving priority. With additional resources, the additional resources basically it will allow us to do more forest management, to have more equipment and more personnel, which will make it easier over time to reduce the risk of catastrophic fire. Right now, what we do, and what has plagued us for so long, is taking money from the management side and the recreation side of our house and putting it into fire suppression. Governor, as I was told by Governor Polis in Colorado, it takes $1,400 an acre to do forest management. I don't know what it is in California, but in Colorado it's $50,000 an acre to put the fire out.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I told folks earlier I wasn't great at math, but I was good enough to know that's not a great ratio.
Yeah.
So the more of $1,400 we spend, the less $50,000 we spend, the fewer acres get caught up in these catastrophic fires, and the safer we all will be. So we have the resources, and we'll have the resources, but we will have to prioritize based on risk.
And and I mean, it doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. These guys have been here 6 months. I mean, this is a historic construct that goes back decades of under-resourced. And so they're not only, I'll repeat it, just not only identifying the issue, they're actively addressing it with specific proposals and plans. And I want to just make this point because it's an important point always to distinguish. The men and women in uniform behind you, U.S. Forest Service, are extraordinary. The work they do is extraordinary. I don't think that, I know that. I've seen it firsthand for years and years and years. And I want to acknowledge that we need to have their back, more resources, more financial support, more tools in their toolkit to get the job done. And so we're partners in this effort. This is not about finger pointing.
Secretary Vilsack, Ashley Zavala with Next Door Media Group. Is there a timeline you could provide on some of these commitments that you've made to the governor here today?
Well, October 1st starts the new fiscal year. The President's budget does include additional resources for the things I've talked about. So we start with the President's budget, and progress is being made on that budget as we speak. The House Ag and the Senate Ag Committee have basically passed on our budget, so progress is being made. So we would see in the new fiscal year additional resources. With the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which we hope occurs as well before October 1st, that will supercharge our efforts. All right. It will require some planning. It will require some allocation of where we need to put the resources. As much as I'd like to say that the only problem we face in terms of fires is in California, the reality is it's in all the western part of the United States, and frankly in some other areas of the country as well. So we have to prioritize. But you're going to see significant improvement and significant effort and significant in this next fiscal year, late 21, early 22, and then what we're able to do, because it's just an amazing amount of resource that will be dedicated. Had it been dedicated 20 years ago, we would probably be talking about something different today in California.
And just a quick follow-up to that, and I understand it takes time and process to allocate these funds and get things going, but what do you say to those in this state who are anxious as a month like October, November, December gets closer, which is, fire season?
Turn your camera around and pan the folks in uniform from CAL FIRE and the Forest Service. And tell folks that they've got some dedicated people willing to risk their lives every single day to protect them and their homes and their property. And they're going to do the best job they possibly can do to make sure as many people and as many homes and buildings and businesses are saved. And to the governor's point, they do a hell of a job every single day. Just follow them for a single day and you'll know what we're talking about.
Well said. Vilsack.
Got time for one more.
Yeah, Governor, Dustin Gardner from the San Francisco Chronicle. You spoke in your meeting with the White House last week about the lack of aerial support and that being a major shortcoming for the state. Have you received any assurances from the federal government that they will provide more planes, more aerial support?
We're in conversations, but the challenge is there's only a few contracted DC-10s nationwide, and we compete for those contracts, the state and the federal government. Put it in perspective, I think the VLAT fleet is just 4 right now on the DC-10s in particular. I was on the phone a couple days ago we were trying to drive down a conversation to get that 747 back in our hands, and that's been a challenge. Looks like that thing is sold, so we're still working to get some more aero equipment. That said, we haven't been shy or sheepish. We haven't been passive. We've been very aggressive in replacing the old Hueys with new Blackhawks. We've got those C-130s, the J's coming in under Cal Flyer flag, and you're seeing those coming in almost on a, well, I don't want to say monthly basis, quarterly basis. So we've been very aggressive, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment and procurement in that space. As I said, the largest civilian aerial fleet in the world. That said, we're looking forward to working with the federal government to identify some additional resources. As the Secretary said, this is not just California specific. So when those resources are used in Montana, Colorado, or elsewhere, those aren't necessarily available to us. And that's why I think it's time for all of us to consider strategies to procure as well as maintain. And the challenge is not just the asset itself, it's keeping those assets operational. And that's why we do a lot of contracting. And we just have to, I think, work through some of those issues.
Can I add to that? That's okay. Governor, your comments came to my desk.
Did they?
Yes,
All right.
they did. They came to my desk, and essentially, one of the challenges that we're working on right now is making sure that we get the Defense Department personnel necessary to fly the planes. So sometimes it's not even a plane; it's the pilot, the people who know how to fly these planes and how to operate them. They have to be available. The Defense Department obviously has a lot of issues. We're in the process of dealing with Secretary Austin to make sure that the personnel is freed up to be able to put them in the pilot seat. So the governor's comments were heard, and I was given instructions, and now I'm working with Secretary Austin to make sure we get the people in the planes to fly them.
Appreciate
Thank you all.
Real quick, I have one last question. I'm with KRCR News Channel 7. Obviously, a lot of these fires are naturally started. Some of them are started by PG&E equipment, obviously. What are you doing to keep them accountable right now as some of those fires are burning because of them?
I've been probably the most aggressive governor in California history trying to hold PG&E accountable. We created a new wildfire infrastructure safety division at the Natural Resource Department. That's specific to the question as it relates to oversight. We have tied compensation with PG&E executives to wildfire safety. The entire board has been replaced, new CEO, new accountability and oversight measures that are demonstrable, including more oversight now, more aggressive oversight in the California legislature. We have clawback for provisions if they don't meet the goals and expectations we set forth in the bill to get them out of bankruptcy. The state of California can intervene, and we're requiring them to put unprecedented investment in undergrounding, hardening their equipment. You saw this the other day, PG&E committed to 10,000 miles of undergrounding. Now it's going to take years. It's not enough, but it's a start. New wildfire cameras, new equipment, new helicopters they're investing in, as well as more vegetation management on their side of the aisle with the IOUs, not just PG&E, but the others in the state in concert with the state of California. But trust me, we are keeping laser focused of oversight and accountability on PG&E.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Dale cut me, but then I'll bring